are going to start a 7-part Christmas series. 7-part Christmas series. It's going to look like this. The first 5 parts, first 5 studies are titled Hope Announced. As a group, Hope Announced. Today we will see Hope Announced, and we'll see that Jesus is announced. And then the last 2 studies that we spend together will be called Hope Arrived. So we'll see Hope Announced, and in that we will see a prophecy today concerning the birth of Jesus. And then we will see a prophecy concerning the birth of John the Baptist, because he was part of the Christmas story. And then we will see the third one in that series, Jesus being announced, Hope Announced. We will see Mary's Magnificat. That is Mary's song from Luke chapter 1 concerning her pregnancy and all that was going on in her heart during that time, all the things that the Lord was doing. And then after that, we will see John's birth, John the Baptist and his birth, because again, he was born shortly before Jesus and had a part to play in all that. And John's dad was Zechariah. And so we will spend study number 5 on Zechariah's prophecy. Once Zechariah's son, John the Baptist, is born, Zechariah is filled with the Spirit. His mouth is opened. He had been speechless before that, but his mouth is open. He begins to prophesy, and he shares about the birth of John the Baptist, his son, and about Jesus, the son of Mary. And those are the first 5. Hope Announced. And then the last 2 studies, we will obviously look at the birth of Jesus, because that's important when you're talking about Christmas, right? The birth of Jesus. And then the very last study that we spend together will be we'll be looking at Jesus being presented in the temple. He during that last study, he's born. He's an infant, a newborn. He's taken to the temple to be circumcised, to be presented in the temple, and he gets visits. Him and his parents get 2 visits from 2 very special people while in the temple. And so that comprises the next 7 sessions of this Christmas series. Now, the way that I have laid this out, some of you are going to benefit from this greatly. Others may have to play catch up a little bit, because what we are doing is I've designed it so that we're going to start today Sunday, and then the next Christmas message will be this coming Wednesday night. And then the one following that will be next Sunday, and then the following will be next Wednesday night, the next Wednesday night. So if you're coming on Sundays and Wednesdays, you're going to get the complete series. If you do not normally come on Wednesdays, I would invite you out. Come on out, join us, get the entire series. And if you do not come on Wednesday nights also, or you miss one, we do put these up on our YouTube channel, so you can always go back and look if you would like to keep the entire series. Why would you want to keep the entire series or hear the entire series? Well, because we need help staying focused during the Christmas season. I mentioned to you a few moments ago that Thanksgiving is one of my favorite holidays. It's second only to Christmas. I like Christmas a little bit more. And all that goes along with Christmas, obviously, gifts. I love gifts. Now, I love the Christmas tree, and I love the lights, and we'll talk about the lights a little bit later in our study this morning. But I love gifts. Now, I do love to get gifts. It's a good thing. However, I love to give gifts now more than I like getting gifts. And just to give you a little clue as to how much I enjoy Christmas, I've got a son that is now 25 years old. And he's always the easiest for me to shop for out of my family, because we like a lot of similar things. But I was done Christmas shopping for him this summer, and then I set about starting to shop for my other family members and some friends and things. And so I've been in the mindset since summer. Every once in a while, I'll put on some Nat King Cole, listen to some Christmas music, and because that's the kind of person that I am. I love Christmas. And I also, when I'm giving gifts, if I can, I will avoid gift bags. If I have to, I'll use a gift bag. But generally speaking, I love to wrap gifts. because I think that it expresses to the person that I'm giving it to how much I care about them, how much I love them. I want to do my best, even in giving a gift, wrap it up, get some ribbon on there, put too much tape, put a tag on there, and try to do my best to present that gift so that they can rip that open and experience that whole thing. But I want that person, that individual, to understand, you know what, I love you, I care about you, I thought about this gift, I thought about wrapping it, I'm giving it to you. Those are the things that excite me. And I think that we have a reason to be that excited about Christmas. Why would we possibly, how could we possibly be that excited about Christmas? Well, we're going to talk about some of those things this morning. A television interviewer was walking the streets of Tokyo at Christmas time. Much as in America, in Tokyo, Christmas shopping is a big commercial success there in Tokyo, Japan. The interviewer stopped one young lady on the sidewalk and asked, "What is the meaning of Christmas?" This young lady, laughing and hands filled with gift bags already, responded, "I don't know. Is that the day that Jesus died?" Well, she had the wrong holiday. That would be Black Friday and the resurrection on Easter. But this young lady in her answer expressed what happens to so many people during the holiday and specifically the Christmas season. For many, during the Christmas season, oddly enough, Jesus dies. What do I mean by that? I mean that oftentimes in the shuffle, in the chaos of the Christmas and the Christmas parades and buying things and giving your list to your mom or your dad and the Christmas parties and the food and stuff going on at school, oftentimes in the midst of that Christmas madness, Christmas chaos, Jesus gets lost. Thus, the reason why we are spending so much time over this next month looking at Christmas, because there is so much more than the gifts. As much as I love the gifts, there's so much more than that. There's a reason that I love giving gifts. There's a reason that I love getting gifts. There's a reason that gifts are so special. It is because Christmas means the gift of Jesus. It means the gift of eternal life. And obviously, as you can see on our screen, it means the gift of hope. And we can have a genuine hope. In Isaiah chapter 8, where you are patiently waiting for me and doing such a good job, I want to call your attention to verse 7 of Isaiah chapter 8 as we begin. "Now therefore, behold, the Lord brings up over them the waters of the river." He's talking about the banks that God is going to flood. He says the waters of the river, strong and mighty. And what is that river? The king of Assyria and all his glory. He will go up over his channels and go over all his banks. So the king of Assyria, the Assyrians, are going to flood. What are they going to flood? Verse 8, "He will pass through Judah. He will overflow and pass over. He will reach up to the neck, and the stretching out of his wings will fill the breadth of your land, O Emmanuel." Verse 9, "Be shattered, all you peoples, and be broken in pieces. Give ear, all you from far countries. Gird yourselves, but be broken in pieces. Gird yourselves, but be broken in pieces," he says twice. It was in that type of setting that Isaiah in chapter 9, and you can turn there now to Isaiah chapter 9, that Isaiah gives this prophecy. Now, he was in the midst of giving some horrifying news. And that was that the Jews would experience hardship and oppression at the hands of the Assyrian people. Now, I thought that we were talking about Christmas. Why are we talking about the Jews being attacked? Well, because that is the setting in which we get our wonderful prophecy this morning. Let me give you just a little bit of background and to give you a clue as to what Isaiah was talking about there. God's people, the Jews, the Israelites, were divided at this time. And you had the people, there had been a civil war and they split up so that there were two different kingdoms. They were not at peace. And Isaiah has been called to be a prophet to primarily to the northern group of the children of Israel at this time. They were referred to as Judah. You had Israel, and then you had Judah. And Isaiah is prophesying primarily to Judah at this time. And what he's telling them in chapter 8, the chapter previous to what we're going to be spending our time in, is that there was some terrible news. The Assyrians were coming, and all that they had to look forward to was oppression, bloodshed, attack. Now, that's not great news, is it? And obviously, when we're talking about Christmas, we go, where is this even going? Because Christmas is supposed to be joy and bright colors and happiness and gifts and all of those things. And yet, even as we say that, there are some of us in here, as small as this group is, we do not have a large group, but even in this size of a group, no doubt there are some of you that as we head into the Christmas season, this may not be your favorite season. In fact, the coming of the Christmas season may indicate a time of sadness or darkness, perhaps. You may at this time remember loved ones that you have lost or relationships that have been broken. This may be a bad time, a bad reminder of things that have happened in the past. But through Christmas, we have hope. Hope beyond packages, hope beyond a tree. Isn't that a weird thing? We can go back and find out what the origin was of the tree and go, oh man, that's bad or whatever. I love Christmas trees. I think they're wonderful, but it's such a strange thing that we cut down a tree and we put it in our living room. Then we decorate it, put lights and things on it. Now I love it all. I love all of that stuff. But at the same time, it's weird. And every time I'm doing it and we're trying to get it straight, okay, a little bit over to the left and to the right, it's kind of like a thought always crosses my mind like, why are we even doing this? This is so strange. But I love doing it. I love all of the romanticism of it all. I love all of those things. There's hope beyond that, beyond the lights, beyond the gifts, beyond all of it, beyond the Christmas songs, beyond the Frosty the Snowman movie or whatever it is. There's hope beyond all of that, and we're going to see that today. But that was the setting into which Isaiah, really God speaking through Isaiah, gives us this wonderful prophecy concerning Christmas, and obviously Christmas concerns the birth of Jesus. So let's look at Isaiah chapter 9 now. For those of you that take notes, there are two main divisions. Now, let me explain a little bit about what's going up here on this screen. Remember, we've got 5 parts that are going to be under this title, Hope Announced. These will be pre-birth, pre-Jesus, people talking about the coming of Jesus. And this is the first in that part, first in that series. It's Hope Announced, and today Jesus will be announced. We will not see the name Jesus, but we will see some clues in here that will tell you and I, oh, Isaiah was talking about Jesus. And we're going to be looking at verses 1 through 7 here. And there are 2 main divisions, which are relief, and then we will see the reason for that relief. Why is there even relief? We'll see the reason for that relief. Let's get into our first part, which is the first 5 verses here in Isaiah chapter 9. Now that we understand Isaiah chapter 8 and that there would be hardships coming from the Assyrians, now you and I understand why Isaiah says to them in verse 1, nevertheless, the gloom will not be upon her who is distressed. Yes, the people would be distressed, and there would be gloom hanging over them, but it would not last. They would have a reason. After Isaiah shares with them chapter 9 here, they would have reason, even in viewing this future Assyrian attack, even through that, they would have reason to be joyful. And so that's what we're going to look at this morning. So he says there, nevertheless, the gloom will not be upon her who is distressed. As when at first, and I'll explain these, what he's talking about. As when at first he lightly esteemed the land of Zebulun, the land of Naphtali, and afterward more heavily oppressed her by the way of the sea beyond the Jordan, in Galilee of the Gentiles. Now, there's a lot going on here already that I'll take a moment to explain. As when he first lightly esteemed the land of Zebulun and a land of Naphtali. That would indicate for us that the lands of Zebulun and Naphtali were not highly esteemed. They were not really anything special. They may or may not have been neat places, nice places to live. It would be the equivalent of somebody saying to us today, well, Paris and Menifee. Paris? Do you mean, no, not that Paris. The other Paris, the California Paris. And they might say to us, Paris and Menifee, or maybe Paris and Hammett, or whatever combo, those two cities. You may love Menifee, or you may live in Paris, or wherever you might live. You might think, well, it's a great place. I like it. It's nice, it's clean, it's whatever. But beyond that, there's not really much special about it. I mean, it's not Hollywood. There are not celebrities and stars visiting this place and, roaming around, downtown and, paparazzi taking pictures. There's not really much going on there. It's a nice place. It's got some nice parks, and yeah, I guess it's great. The schools are okay, and it's okay, but it's not a highly esteemed place. It's not a place that people are dying to get to. Generally speaking, when you think about California, now we're from California, so it's a little bit hard for us to understand, but some of you may have come to California from out of state, from some other place. But generally, when you think of California, what do you think of? Los Angeles. Think of beaches. Santa Monica, the Pier. Think of Hollywood. Think of LA. You might think of, a little bit further, San Francisco. You might think of San Diego if you're heading a little bit further south. San Diego. Or you might think, California, San Diego, that's pretty close to, the border. Go down and get some tacos or whatever. People have all sorts of thoughts, and the beaches and all of those things. They don't generally say, Southern California, oh, you mean Menifee. That's not something that they normally say. They wouldn't normally say that, oh, Southern California, man, I'm dying to go to Paris, go check that place out, or Hammett, So those are not places that they generally, those are lightly esteemed. Zebulun and Naphtali, same thing. Zebulun and Naphtali, okay, but they're lightly esteemed. And afterward, more heavily oppressed her. This king of Assyria lightly esteemed Zebulun and Naphtali at first. They're nothing special. But afterward, he would more heavily oppress these places. However, verse 1 at the end, here's a little clue. Now, you and I, we understand this. By the way of the sea, beyond the Jordan, that's the Jordan River, Galilee of the Gentiles. Now, you and I are somewhat familiar with Galilee of the Gentiles because that is where Jesus spent much of his time, his earthly ministry in Galilee. And he had kind of set up his earthly ministry base there. He worked in and around Galilee. And it wasn't the only place that he worked, but that was where he spent much of his time. He performed many of his miracles there in Galilee of the Gentiles. And so you and I understand the message. However, it's possible that the people receiving the message, and perhaps even Isaiah himself, may not have really even understood why a reference to Galilee. What's that all about? It's kind of like when your mom and dad communicate through you. And your dad says, hey, do me a favor. Go tell your mom I said 3/4. And you're like, tell her you said 3/4. What is it? Just go tell. I don't need to, just hurry up and go tell her. And then you go over and you're like, hey, Mom, Dad said 3/4? And she goes, oh, thank you very much. Please tell him I said 7/8. I don't even know what that, it doesn't matter. Just hurry up, go tell him. And then you go back, hey, Dad, Mom said 7/8? Yeah, oh, great, fantastic, thank you very much. You don't have a clue as to what it is they're talking about. A teacher may do the same thing. Oh, that's right, you go to your 5th period. Hey, do me a favor, tell Mr. So-and-so or Mrs. So-and-so, tell him I said such and such. And you go over there and you give them the message. You don't understand what the message is. And maybe nobody else in the class understands. But the person receiving it understands. Now, these individuals, Isaiah was the messenger. And God had told him, go, I'm giving you a prophecy, go tell them this. The Assyrians are coming. Horrible news. However, Zebulun and Naphtali, they're lightly esteemed. They're going to be oppressed. There's oppression coming. Okay, is there some good news coming? Yes. By the way of the sea, beyond the Jordan, in Galilee of the Gentiles. Really? That's the good news, huh? Galilee of the Gentiles. I mean, we're talking to Jews. The Jews and the Gentiles did not like each other. Now, in case you're not sure, like, what is a Gentile? A Gentile is a general name for anybody that's not a Jew. You have Jews and Gentiles. Now, it's strange because at this time, remember I told you the kingdom has been split up into two kingdoms. Both of those kingdoms are hating each other, and both of these Jewish kingdoms have teamed up. They have secret alliances with Gentile nations, Gentile kings. And yet, they don't like Gentiles. But they've teamed up with Gentiles, each of them respectively, because they're ready to go to war with one another. But good news doesn't generally come out of Galilee of the Gentiles. That's not like a good thing. It's not like, listen, California is going to be attacked by the Russians or maybe the Chinese these days, and we go, oh, they're going, China's going to attack us. They're going to send missiles. Terrible news. You're going to experience some oppression. But don't worry, because even though Menifee and Hemet are lightly regarded, there's hope coming out of Hemet. And you go, like, I don't even understand. Like, we're going to get bombed. How's Hemet going to help us? How's that going to happen? That's the equivalent here. That's what's being said to the people. Now, I told you as we head into verse 2 that we're looking at relief. There's hope. Isaiah is telling the people there's hope. The days ahead are dark, but there's hope. And so in verse 2, he tells them, first of all, there is going to be relief from the darkness. Look at verse 2. The people who walked in darkness have seen a great light. Those who dwelt in the land of the shadow of death, upon them a light has shined. Now, for the people receiving this way back then, they would have thought, okay, the Assyrians are coming. There's going to be oppression. There's going to be darkness. But there's light, so to speak, at the end of the tunnel. For you and I, we understand that Christmas gives the hope of light, the hope of overcoming darkness. Again, you may have heard the studies like I have. The holidays and Christmas time can really, we see the rise of depression. Percentages go up because people become depressed during the holidays oftentimes. Why? It may be because of family situations. Maybe they do not have family around. Maybe there was family drama at some point in the past, and Christmas is a reminder as families are gathering together. There are many who realize I don't have family to gather. I've made mistakes, or somebody else hurt me, and now I don't have family to gather with anymore. Maybe I don't have people to, kids to give presents to or whatever. There are lots of things that can lead to that depression. And so the holidays can oftentimes be a time of great depression, a time of great darkness. But they don't have to be. When you and I and others, when we keep our eyes fixed on Jesus, when we're not like that young lady in Tokyo, when we're not focused on the packages. Packages are great, gifts are good. Nothing wrong with that. But when you and I get caught up in that, when we put that as the main thing in the holiday, then it's no wonder that darkness would set in. If the holidays are only about gift giving, then the darkness rushes in. But when you and I fix our eyes on Jesus, when we go, oh, wait a minute, whether I have money to buy things for people or not, that's another thing that leads to depression. People go, well, you know what, I don't have any money to really buy things for people that I love. But when you and I fix our eyes on Jesus through that, the darkness is chased away by the light. You see, that's what the coming of Christmas means. It means the coming of Jesus, and the coming of Jesus means light in the dark. Verse 2 again, the people who walked in darkness have seen a great light. Those who dwelt in the land of the shadow of death, upon them a light has shined. Light is a special thing, isn't it? I mean, all throughout the year, light is a wonderful thing. It gets dark, lights go on. For some of you, one of your favorite spots might be, maybe in your backyard. It gets dark, you sit back there, the lights come on, you got string lights back there, and you just, it's so cool. There's something about that glow in the midst of the dark. For some of you, it may be your room. Maybe you've got some lights up on the wall, hanging from the ceiling or whatever. And you like to just turn off the lights and put those string lights on, and they twinkle, or they're there, and that glow in the dark, it just does something. You get under your blanket, turn the AC way down to 52, and then you climb under some blankets, and you got the lights on, you put on a movie or whatever, and you just, it's just so cozy, man. But there's something about those lights, something special about them. But Christmas brings with it light into the darkness. It's a reminder that you and I, yes, we do live in a dark world. That is true. And it's only getting darker. I know that's, it's not a popular thought or popular idea, but the world is only getting darker. It is only going to get worse. Regardless of who we vote into office, the days are still going to get darker because the heart of mankind, people, is dark. We see chaos on the rise and murder on the rise, theft on the rise. All of you have seen the videos, on your social media, just like I have, people running out of stores with arms full of stuff. I mean, those kinds of things are just going to continue. And if we only focus on those things, darkness sets in. Once darkness sets in, depression takes root. The cure for that is to keep our eyes fixed on Jesus. To go, you know what? Thank God for Christmas. Because Christmas doesn't just mean gifts and Christmas trees and lights and all of those things. What it means is the birth of Jesus, the hope for all mankind. Let's continue here because there is relief also from despair. Verse 3, you have multiplied the nation. See, that's good news. First, he's telling them the Assyrians are going to come. They're going to oppress you. That would mean death. But now he tells them in verse 3, he says, you have multiplied the nation. God was going to multiply them once again and increased its joy. There it is. They rejoice before you. According to the joy of harvest, as men rejoice when they divide the spoil. We'll get to that last part in just a minute. But joy, that's a major theme in Christmas, isn't it? We sing joy to the world. Why is there joy to the world? Anybody remember the next line? Joy to the world. The Lord is come. That's right. I don't even mind songs about Santa Claus. I know some, a lot of Christians are like, oh my gosh, kill Santa or whatever, da, 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 But I don't mind Santa songs. Songs about reindeers or what's his name with the glowing nose? Rudolph, or songs about elves or whatever. Those things don't bother me. I don't worry about that. It's not a big deal. I know that the main reason for Christmas, and I know that the true is the true meaning of Christmas is Jesus, and so those types of things they don't bother me. But joy is a major theme, and it's a major theme because there's hope in the midst of that darkness. The despair is done away with because of that joy being given to us through the birth of Jesus and all that the birth and life of Jesus means. We'll talk about that some more in a moment here as we get into it. But the joy, the rejoicing, major themes for Christmas, and there's reason to rejoice. Maybe I don't have family around. Maybe bad things have happened. Maybe bad things are happening in the world. Maybe there is sadness. Maybe I'm remembering loved ones that aren't around anymore. Maybe they were here last Christmas and now they're not around anymore. That's happened in my life. A loved one who didn't die, even worse, she chose to leave. It's very sad when I think about it. But even in the midst of that, there's reason to be joyful because Jesus means hope. Hope of restoration. Hope of newness. And joy that goes along with that. When I keep my eyes fixed on joy, darkness is pushed away, but so is despair. I'm relieved of that. And he describes the kind of joy here in verse 3. He says, they rejoice before you according to the joy of harvest. You and I would have a little bit of a hard time understanding this. The joy of harvest, what does he say? According to the joy of harvest, because you and I, we're not farmers that are depending on our produce, our crops. These people were farmers, and they would plant early in the season. They would water. They would daily be out there picking weeds and clearing the fields and doing their best to grow their crops as much as they could. And at the end of harvesting season, it meant that they had crops from the last planting season, and they were able to dry those goods and save them for future use. Or, maybe some of you may pickle things. You put things in a jar and you pickle them. You put a certain kind of a mixture of liquid, and those things are preserved for future use. And that's the idea here, that they've ended all of their hard work, the harvest time. They've collected all of their goods. They've stepped back. They realize that they have enough food to get them through the harsh winter and into the spring and summer months so that they can start planting again. Heading into those cooler months, the hard work is over. They can relax, take their ease a little bit. So there's a great joy that goes along with that. The joy of harvest. It would be the equivalent of a loved one of yours being diagnosed with cancer. I know that's harsh. That's not the same thing as planting. But the point is this. The point I want to make is this, that when somebody is diagnosed with cancer, there's a lot of hardship and work that goes into that. There's weeks or perhaps months of hospital stays. Lonely hospital rooms because family can't be there 24/7. And so you have this person suffering, but they're going through and they're taking their daily medication and they're hooked up to IVs and they're going through their treatments and talking to doctors and going through tests and surgeries and all of these different things. And at the end of it, maybe you've walked through something like that with a loved one, but at the end of it, when the doctor declares and puts the stamp of approval, boom, you are free from cancer today. Cancer's passed, it's been defeated. The joy that goes along with that. There's a newness of life. There's the feeling of restoration, like, all right, man, we made it through. It's the same type of thing. We made it through the planting season. It was harsh. There was hot sun trying to burn our crops, or maybe there were lightning storms or whatever the bugs and different things, but it's all done, and now we can relax a little bit. There's joy that goes along with that. But he also said, as men rejoice when they divide the spoil. The spoil is a word that it would indicate warfare. Why is that a joyful thing? It's not. When war ends, it says, as men rejoice when they divide the spoil. The war's over, and now they're dividing up the goods. But the joy is not in the dividing of the spoil, but in the fact that the war is over. It's good news. So the birth of Jesus at Christmas time, we can remember that we're relieved of darkness. We can be relieved of despair. It goes on to tell us a third thing. Sorry for those of you that take notes. It starts with a B. I always tried that alliteration, man. Tried to get all D's. But good news. There's hope. Because the next word is going to start with a B also. Okay, so we'll have DD and then BB. Everybody okay? All right, good. The burden. We can be relieved of the burden. Verse 4. He says, for you have broken the yoke of his burden. This is great news. I'll tell you why it's great news in just a moment. And the staff of his shoulder, the rod of his oppressor, as in the day of Midian. And we'll talk about what all that means in just a moment. But this is great news in verse 4. The fact that we celebrate Christmas reminds us that we can be relieved of our burdens. Verse 4, for you have broken the yoke of his burden. I hate when I'm cooking an egg. And you go to flip it over, and you break the yolk. Angers me. Anybody else? Cooking an egg, flip it over, break the yolk, and you're just like, oh, I just want to throw it away and start over. I don't do that because I see money. Oh no, I can't throw that egg away. I got to eat it. Oh well. Try again next time. Well, he's not talking about an egg yolk here, okay? What he's talking about is an instrument, a wooden tool that they would attach two animals together with. They would take these two animals and put them side by side, and they would put this heavy piece of wood over the top of the shoulders, and they would latch them all in, hook them up to this yoke. It was called a yoke. They would yoke them together, and then the animals would move together, whether they were pulling a wagon or some kind of cart or plowing a field, whatever it might have been. But he pictures these people like an animal that have been yoked together to a burden. And he says, listen, there's good news. Good news. Isaiah is saying Christmas is coming. And what that means is that God is going to break the yoke of his burden. In other words, you picture yourself being yoked together with somebody else who's trying to take you down. Somebody that's pulling you down. Somebody that's weighing you down. Good news. God came and he split that yoke in half. Separated the two so that you can be free. The burden has been loosed. The burden has been lifted. Christmas means that our burdens have been lifted. I no longer am tied to death. I no longer am tied to hopelessness. But now, because of Christmas, I can be hopeful. Jesus came. He broke the yoke of my burden. I'm no longer tied down to sin and death. But now I have the hope of eternal life. Now there's no more question about whether I'm going to heaven or to hell. Now I know I'm going to heaven. The burden is gone. He says the staff of his shoulder, there's the oppressor. He says the staff of his shoulder, the rod of his oppressor. It's the idea of this oppressor, this king of Assyria to these people, hovering over these people. You're going to be slaves to me, you Jews. For us, now we're no longer under the threat of the Assyrians, but sin and death hovers over us. Keeps us trapped oftentimes. But because of Jesus, that yoke has been broken. The burden has been relieved. The staff of his shoulder, gone. The rod of his oppressor, always threatening me, gone. And then he says, is in the day of Midian. Probably referring to Gideon and his defeat over the Midianites. But it's gone. They no longer hold power over us. And then there is a fourth thing here that we are relieved of, and that is battle. This is a wonderful one. Christmas means that we are relieved of the battle. In verse 5, he says to these people, for every warrior's sandal, talking about their chanclas here, for every warrior's chancla, their sandal, from the noisy battle, and garments rolled in blood. Notice, battle and death and bloodshed. He says these things will be used for burning and fuel of fire. They are no longer going to be used as instruments of warfare and instruments of death, but now these things that once were used for hatred are now used to warm people and now used for work. They're fueling the fires, but not the fires of hatred any longer. Not the fires of hopelessness any longer. But now these things, these instruments have been turned into instruments of hope. So he says that we're free of the battle. What does that mean? Jesus, when he was on the cross, declared something. In our Greek New Testament, the word is tetelestai. Tetelestai, Jesus said. Tetelestai. What does that mean? It's three words. It is finished, Jesus declared from the cross. What did that mean? What do you mean it's finished? What are you talking about? What it meant was the battle is over. The battle has been won. You see, when Jesus died on the cross, he defeated sin. That's why you and I have the hope of sin not holding us back anymore. We're free from sin. Sure, we still sin. Sure, there's still sin present in our lives. We still do battle with it. But ultimately, we know that God is going to wipe all of that out. We're going to go be with him, and we're going to be sinless when we get there. The battle's done. But Jesus also did something else. After conquering sin on the cross, he went and was buried, remember, 3 days. He came out of that tomb, and in rising from the dead, he defeated death. You see, the fact that Jesus died and then rose again gives you and I hope that there's life after this crummy life. You may not be living a crummy life, but you look around and you can get your focus on things can look really, really crummy. We look at the world that we're living in, the violence that's taking place and the theft and the lying, the chaos, all of it. You see that all over the place. And we can get focused on that. But if you and I will remember the true meaning of Christmas, Jesus, oh, that's right, Jesus, then we will have hope that we can be relieved of darkness and despair and the burden and the battle. That's the message that Isaiah was delivering to these people. And it's great news. Now, what he does next, and we're in the home stretch here, is that in verses 6 and 7, he gives them the reason for the relief. What is the reason for that relief? In verse 6, he tells the people there, "For unto us a child is born." Now, I think that this is hilarious. Now, we get this verse, "For unto us a child is born, and unto us a son is given. And the government will be upon his shoulder. And his name will be called Wonderful, Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace." I guarantee you that you will get a Christmas card this season. And you'll look in there and it'll have this verse in there. And you'll go, oh, just warms my heart. This is beautiful. But you, Fusion High School students, you'll go, ha ha, I know what he's talking about. Death and decay. But Jesus came. And your parents will be like, what in the world are you talking about? Yeah, I know about Isaiah. You know about Isaiah chapter 8? Oh, buddy, watch out. The Assyrians are coming. And they're just going to think you're crazy. But you and I understand. But this is hilarious to me. I want you to think about this for a moment. In chapter 8, he's told them that the Assyrians are coming. And they're going to attack you northern tribes. And they're going to oppress you. And there's going to be darkness. And there's going to be death. And there's going to be bloodshed. But don't worry. There's a baby being born. I mean, think about this. If you're receiving bad news, receiving some terrible news, somebody, you're going to experience hardship, but don't worry, you're going to have a little brother or a little sister. I mean, when you think about your little brother or your little sister, do you think about, oh, hope restored, thank God? Or do you think, oh God, why have you forsaken me and given me this little kid? Generally speaking, little kids, babies being born, do not necessarily restore hope to all mankind. You know what I'm saying? But that's what Isaiah is telling them, man. Like the days are dark ahead. There's oppression coming. Now there is hope. Don't worry. There's a baby going to be born. Is that supposed to help me? Like, I don't know. What does that mean? Okay, so I have diapers to look forward to. Great. To add to all the rest of this mess. Not only are the Assyrians coming, but now I got to change some little kid. Oh, great. Now I got to watch my little brother or my little sister. This is not a good thing. But you and I, now Isaiah and the children of Israel, maybe they didn't understand this. I don't know. They might have been like, this is not helping. Or is this supposed to be a message of hope? Because this is not helping. But you and I looking back, he mentioned Galilee, Jesus. Verse 6, "For unto us a child is born." Oh, man. I love the way that God does things. Remember, oftentimes we've got God in a box. You've got him in that little box. Like God does X, Y, and Z. He doesn't do anything, but he only does it that way. And then God does something entirely different. And where they're looking like, oh, the Assyrians are coming and give us some hope, Isaiah says there's a baby being born. What? That's supposed to help? Yes. That's God's plan. A baby being born? Yes. What wonderful news. But I want you to notice two things here. He says, "For unto us a child is born, unto us a son is given." We see his humanity and his divinity there. For those of you that are taking notes, I would want to make note of that. For unto us a child is born. Jesus was born just like any other baby, just like you were born. Though not in a hospital, we know the story. But he was born. He didn't come, somehow, come through his mom's stomach, glowing, here I am, he didn't do that. He was born. His mother went through labor, 9 months, went through labor, And Jesus was pushed out like any other child. Shows us his humanity. But we also see his divinity in this verse. Unto us a son is given. That points to the fact that he was God in flesh, God the Son. He was given by God. So yes, he was born, but even in being born, he was being given. And he was fully man and fully God. I don't understand that. Great. It's okay. It's okay. I got my slide presentation together on my laptop. I then airdropped it to that computer. And from that computer, you are looking at my slides right now. How in the airdrop is a trip? Standing in line at Disneyland, sending pictures to people that you don't even know, you know what I mean? What a trip. What a trip. But how did my slides go from my computer and I don't know if anybody else pictures Willy Wonka, the old one, all the little particles. Anybody ever seen that? The one with what's the guy's name? The old guy? Gene Wilder. Thank you very much. Yeah, and those, all the little particles, and it translates over there. But I do. Every time I do airdrop, I picture that. Like Willy Wonka, like all these little things going through the air or whatever. But what a trip! I don't understand that. So the fact that Jesus was 100% God and 100% man, I don't understand. And join the club. There's lots of things that we don't understand. But that's how God worked it. For unto us a child is born, unto us a son is given, and the government will be upon his shoulder. That's great news for 2022. That at some point, the government is going to be on the shoulders of Jesus. That's great news. That's where we need our government to be. Right now, it's not on the shoulders of Jesus. Yes, God is ultimately in control. But obviously our government is doing its best to not be controlled by Jesus. The government will be upon his shoulder, and his name will be called, look at this name, Wonderful, Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. He doesn't say, and his names will be. It's singular, and his name will be called. Wonderful, Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. Reminds me of my Mexican family, with all of their names. What an incredible name. Look at these names. Wonderful. Speaking of this is the character of Jesus, this baby that was being born. Wonderful. Counselor. That's a good one right there. That'll save you thousands in therapy. If you go to God to get your counsel. Counselor. Mighty God. Everlasting Father. Prince of Peace. You see, the reason that we will experience relief, and the reason that Christmas brings relief, or at least it can, if we focus on the reason for the season, when we focus on that is because of, number one, this exemplary leader. Exemplary meaning he's all-encompassing. Everything that we need is found in Jesus. Everything that we need. Reminds me of Colossians 2, verses 1 through 10. Where we're told that everything that we need, everything that's in the Godhead, the God the Father, is found in Jesus, we're told there. Everything that we need is found in this. No wonder we have relief during the Christmas season. Because when we get our eyes off of the packages and off of the songs and the movies and the whatever else all goes along with it, which those are great things. I love all those things. But when we get down to the nitty-gritty, to the core, and we go, oh, that's right, Jesus, and the birth of Jesus meant relief. When we do that, then we can experience these things. He's not just an exemplary leader. As we finish in verse 7, he is an everlasting leader. No wonder we can have relief because of Christmas. Because in verse 7, he says, of the increase of his government and peace, there will be no end. Everlasting. No end. Once Jesus is on that throne, so to speak, once he's taken control of everything, it's everlasting. There'll be no end to that. We won't ever have to vote and hope that our candidate wins, because we won't have a candidate. We'll have Jesus. Of the increase of his government and peace, there will be no end. Upon the throne of David and over his kingdom, to order it Because they had always been told that the Messiah would come through the line of David. So upon the throne of David and over his kingdom, to look at this. This is the kind of government that Jesus runs, to order it and establish it with judgment and justice. You know that God can order and establish your life? Did you know he's actually doing that? Your life may feel at times like it's chaotic. Things are out of control. Like, man, I can't, things are going wrong in my, you don't have a perfect family. Join the club. Dysfunctional family. What does that even mean? Who doesn't have a dysfunctional family? Everybody does. Even the Cleavers. Beaver, that old show? Even they were dysfunctional. I mean, there's no such thing as a non-dysfunctional. Everybody's dysfunctional. Join the club. But what God does is he orders and establishes. He's doing that in our lives through Jesus, because Jesus was born, establishing us, changing us, ordering our lives. And things may at times seem like they're just out of control. Things going wrong in the family, and you can't date the person that you want to, and you got a pimple, right on the the point of your nose, and everybody's everything. Sometimes it just seems like everything's going wrong. But when we keep our eyes fixed on Jesus, we go, hey, you know what? So what? Yeah, I look funny, I got a pimple on my nose, whatever, things are going wrong, but you know what? I got Jesus, man. And if everything falls apart, I still got Jesus. He's an everlasting leader. He goes on to say, from that time forward, even forever, there it is again, everlasting leader, the zeal of the Lord of hosts will perform this. Wonderful news this Christmas season. So I hope that you will continue to join us, and along with us together, Fusion High School will keep our eyes fixed on Jesus. One night at dinner, a man who had spent many summers in Maine fascinated his companions, his dinner guests, by telling them of his experiences in a little town named Flagstaff in Maine. The town, which sat in a valley, was scheduled to be flooded. Scheduled to be flooded? What are you talking about? They were going to turn that area into a man-made lake. It was part of a large lake for which a dam was being built. And in the months before it was to be flooded, all improvements and repairs in the whole town were stopped. What was the use of painting a house if it were to be covered with water in 6 months? Why repair anything when the whole village was going to be wiped out? So, day by day, week by week, and month by month, the whole town became more and more discouraged and allowed their homes to sink further and further into disrepair. The man explained this as he added to the story. He said, where there is no faith in the future, there is no power in the present. It's the same thing for you and I. It was the same thing for those people that Isaiah was talking to. If they had no faith, no hope for the future, they would become powerless in the present. And it's the same thing for you and I. When you and I only focus on Christmas stuff, the trees and the lights and the gifts and all of those things that go together with that idea of Christmas. If you and I only get caught up in the commercialism of it, the materialism of it, then you and I will sink further and further into disrepair. We'll have no hope. Why even care? Why even, this, what does Christmas even mean? If it's only about packages and stuff, that's going to come and go. But you see, when you and I remember that Christmas is not just December, and it's not just a movie on TV, it's not just a song, it's not just a tree, and it's not just lights, and it certainly isn't gifts, it certainly isn't Amazon.com. When we remember the true meaning, Jesus, the birth of Jesus, then we remember all of this, the relief, the reason for it all. And then you and I will be filled with joy, like joy in harvest time. Then you and I will experience Christmas the way that it was meant to be experienced. Father, thank you so much for this.